Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing something very special. We're going to be doing a tier list video, 1v1 Arabia, like you guys like it, but including the 5 new civilizations that came from the New Kingdoms DLC a while back. And what's extra special is that they just released a new patch a week ago to balance these new civilizations. And so this tier list is super fresh. It's going to be including today's meta and all 50 civilizations that are currently in the game. So it's 100% up to date. The new patch came like a week ago just to balance the new civilizations mainly and to kind of tweak a few things. And I have spent the last week pretty much non-stop grinding the 1v1 rank ladder, playing at the highest level against the best players in the world. I've been playing with the meta, been playing against the meta, been playing with the cheese strategies, been playing against the cheese strategies, been testing some off meta. Pretty much anything you can think of, I've been testing against the best players in the world. And I'm coming today to share what I've found and the knowledge that I've gathered in the last week, maybe 10 days of playing with you guys in this tier list video. So let me go, excuse me, just edit that out. So let me go ahead and show you guys the tiers real quick. So you got the S tier, which is the OP civs. These are the civs that are the strongest in the game. Then you got the A tier, which is strong, B tier, which is viable, C tier, that's subpar, still playable though, and then the D tier, that's bad. Now, please note that even if a civ is bad, you can still win with it. And if a civ is OP, you can still lose with it. Remember, this tier list is meant for all elos, but then again, every elo is different. Like some civs will be easier at some elos, and some civs will be easier at other elos. And no matter what civilization you play and how strong it is in the tier list, you can always make mistakes, and your opponent can also always make mistakes. This tier list will also not be my opinion of civs. My opinion of civs is strictly for me. This would be as objective as possible to really rank how strong the civs are. All right, with all that said, let's go ahead and start ranking these civilizations, and I'll be going alphabetical order, so it's easy for you guys to skip through and find the civ that you're looking for if you're short on time. If you guys have the time, stick with me. I'll be sharing a lot of information throughout the video, of course. All right, starting off with the Armenians, a civilization that's rather new in the game, and to be honest, has gotten a huge buff since the infantry patch, which I'll be referencing a lot, the infantry patch from like April 2025. It really boosted the Armenians, which is an infantry-based civilization. They probably have one of the best champions in the late game. And honestly, after testing the civilization, I feel like it's a classic mid-tier civ. It has strengths and it has weaknesses, but I would put it a little bit lower just to play it safe. I'm going to put it at the top of subpar most likely. And the reason for that is I just feel like it's slightly easier to play against the Civ, especially when it comes to the late game. They lack crucial options like the Bombard Cannon, and they also have a pretty predictable late game in the sense that like they just have like a few compositions that actually work, and all of them kind of play out the same way. They all have to like push really hard. Either you go Champion Skirm or some like Halb Skirm Bunk, and you just try to push down the center. They don't have the best rating options, and they really don't have the best 1v1 Arabia like style gameplay. However, I think it's a really good civ in terms of really good economy, and it has strong options throughout the game in terms of infantry and pressuring your opponent with, a smooth economy behind it. I also really love their cheese strategies. I tried one today, in fact, which is the Church Rush, Fast Castle Church Rush, or a small feudal into Fast Castle Church Rush, and that's absolutely like devastating if you can catch your opponent off guard with it. So this civ can play the meta, and this civ can also cheese a little bit. And I think it's a solid civ, probably at the top of subpar. Might bump it if I'm feeling generous later on. Next up, we have the Aztecs. Aztecs have been historically at the top of the tier list. Then lately, they kind of fell off a little bit. But the last infantry batch really buffed them, in my opinion. Especially with the Jaguar warriors that are now incredible in terms of their attack. I would say Aztecs is a very strong civ right now at what it does, but it still has some key weaknesses. I'd put it in the B tier. For me, it's a viable pick if you like the Aztecs. The new Jaguar warriors are definitely really strong. That unit, like in its element, is bordering on overpowered. Like, let's be honest, the Jaguar warrior in melee combat is kind of overpowered. However, it is weak to range units. It's hard to get to because it's a unique unit, and the Aztecs don't have this crazy economy to get towards the Jaguar warrior. So for me, to play the Aztecs well, you have to be really ready to play whatever your civ can offer, and you can't just like tunnel vision on one option. You might have to play Eagles, you might have to play Skirm Pike, you might have to play a Siege Onager Monk, and then you might have to play Jaguar warriors. You might have to mix and match. every game is different, and you have to be ready to play all your options. But besides that, I think Aztecs are a very solid civ. They get off to a decent start, and they're strong throughout the game. Next up, we got the Bengalis. This is a hard civ to rank because it's one of those civs that has potential. It's quite decent, but I think it's very awkward to play. I would put it, generally speaking, probably near the bottom of subpar. I don't really like the civ in the hands of a beginner player. In fact, if you're a beginner player, I'd say stay as far away from Bengalis as possible. Reason is they don't really have any strong mainline units. Think about it. They have no knight access at all. They don't have Hussar fully upgraded. They're missing the Hussar upgrade. They don't have Arbalest fully upgraded. They're missing Thumb Ring. And they don't have Halb fully upgraded. They're missing the last armor on infantry. So to play Bengalis to their highest strength, you have to do a lot of tech transitions, or you have to mix and match their units, or you have to play with their unique, awkward units like the Ratha and like the Elephant Archer, like the Monk Siege pushes, that kind of stuff. However, if you like to play anti-meta and you like to play with some cheesy strategies, you can definitely pick up the Bengalis. You can try some of their like Fast Castle Ratha or just Fast Castle Monk pushes, or even just play like a standard Feudal Age and then get into some of their awkward, compositions and make it difficult for your opponent to play against you. So a solid anti-meta pick, but by no means an easy civ to get in and just play the game with. All right, next up we got the Berbers. This is a beginner-friendly civ. This is completely the opposite of what Bengalis is for me. Berbers is super, super straightforward. You have a slow start to your civ. You don't really get any crazy bonuses, but your villagers are moving faster. So it's an easy civ to play in the early game. You don't lose any villas to boars. Super beginner-friendly. And then it's really easy to understand what your strong units are. You want to play with cavalry units. You get a discount on everything from the stable, giving you a bunch of options. Light cav, camel, knights. Pretty much can't go wrong with any of them. And then on top of that, you have really solid upgrades on like your skirms. You have access to Genitors if you need them, which are actually a really strong unit. I definitely would not sleep on the Genitor. That unit got buffed a lot over the last couple years and is incredibly strong. It's especially good against archer civs that lack mobility. The Genitors can just chase them down and absolutely chop down their expos when they're on the map at all. So Berbers for me, really, really strong civ. Great as an anti-archer civ, but also pretty good at countering some cavalry civs as well. And I think it has a great late game with their camel archers, with their hussar, with their cavalier, their heavy camel, all getting a discount. And also, fun fact, Berbers get fully upgraded champions. I can't recall if they get Gambesons. My editor will let you guys know, but I'm pretty sure they do, which is kind of cool. So for me, Berbers are going to be somewhere in the top of B tier or in the middle of B tier. I'll put them behind the Aztecs just to play it safe for now, but I think that Berbers, if they get going, they're very, very strong. One last note about the civ, you get off to a slow start, so watch out not to die to meta arm rushes. Next up, we got the Bohemians. Very similar to what I said about the Bengalis. It's one of the civs that's anti-meta in its nature. You don't have good mainline units. Your cav is lacking bloodlines, last armor upgrade. Your infantry is okay, but it's not 100% solid. It's the kind of thing where you get good upgrades and good tech on your infantry, but you don't get any bonuses for it. So it's, it's playable, but nothing too special. Your archers are lacking Thumb Ring, so you have to play towards its strength, and its strength is all about the gunpowder, the monks, getting a lot of gold, getting a lot of stone, playing the map control, expanding towards the extra minerals. But if you do it right, the civ is absolutely dangerous. It's one of the best civilizations in the game at pushing from one area, especially in late game, with the Halb, Hand-Cannoneer, and Hufni's comp. Really strong. I'd put it in the C tier, but I'd put it above the Bengalis, just because I feel like if things go well for the Bohemians, it's much stronger than the Bengalis. It has a higher ceiling. And I also think it has a lower floor in the sense that it's not the hardest civ to understand how to play. You just get a lot of vills on gold, and you make a lot of gold units. And I think especially getting chemistry in Castlage, 3-range Hand Cannoneer as like an all-in push with the Siege Workshop forward, that rush can devastate low elo games. Like, it can absolutely tear people a new one on the rank ladder. So if you're looking for an anti-meta civ and you like gunpowder, Bohemians is definitely your pick. Next up, we got the Britons. It's hard to judge where to put the Britons, but I will say that the maps on Arabia have been a lot more closed nowadays, especially with the new patch. And the more closed the game is, the better Britons are. I'm going to take a pretty bold move here, and I'm going to put them higher than I'd normally put them. Normally, I'd put them at the bottom of subpar these days, which is very sad, because when the definitive edition first came out, I had Britons up at A tier. All right, they were very strong, and expos were meta. Nowadays, skirmishers are actually really, really meta. Like every game almost has skirmishers involved, especially at the higher elos. And so Britons really suffer against the guy just massing a bunch of skirms. That being said, I think Britons have a lot of potential, especially if the maps in the Arabia generations are going to be a bit more closed off. On Chicken Arabia, they are a little bit worse off, in my opinion, because the Chicken Arabia tends to be a little bit more aggressive, and Britons just kind of want to chill. But I think it's still playable. Overall, I think I'm going to take a risk and put them higher up than what I'd normally put them. I'll put them right behind Armenians, right here. I think Britons still do what they do incredibly well. They boom really well, and they have incredible archers at pretty much all points of the game, but especially Castle Age onwards. What they do bad, though, is that they get hard countered by Elite Skirm, and they don't really have that many good options besides the archer units. Like, you can play infantry, you get good upgrades, but it's kind of like Bohemians. Good upgrades, but no bonuses, so it's kind of generic and feels lackluster. Next up, we got the Bulgarians. Now, this is a civ, for those who don't know, that was hard memed on my channel. Like, it was considered one of the worst civs in the game for so long. Now, with the new patch, or not the most recent, but the infantry patch, I think Bulgarians get a lot better. And it's to the point where they're actually very, very viable right now. I would personally put them at the top of C tier, but I'm not exactly sure where to put them. Because the thing is, Bulgarians still get outboomed by a lot of other civs. I just feel like your meta arm rush is actually a lot more scary right now. A lot scarier. And especially on Chicken Arabia, I think you can do some really cool rushes where you just open a couple militia, dance around a little bit, then get the free meta arm upgrade come Feudal Age. You can add a couple more on the way up. And then boom, you have a Drush in Dark Age, harass their chickens, into a meta arm rush in Feudal Age for free. You don't have to get the upgrade, which is kind of nice. Hard to know exactly where to put them, but I think I'd put them ahead of Britons and behind the Armenians, somewhere right there at the top of the C tier. Next up, we got the Burgundians. I feel like Burgundians are the civ that, like, if you know how to play them, they're really strong. But I have to say, I don't like the Flemish militia. I think the Flemish militia can be cute, but the thing is, the Flemish militia died to Elite Skirm. They died to Skirm and Feudal, in fact, because Skirmisher gets an attack bonus against it. It's treated like a spearman. So for me, the Flemish militia is like very situational and kind of useless if your opponent knows about that. It's still possible to play. Like, I do have a video on my channel on YouTube where I win with it against the top player, but it's not really the kind of thing you can pull off every game with the Burgundians. So Burgundians for me are kind of like a lackluster civ. And they also have a pretty weak early game. If you can survive the early game, then sure, they are strong. But honestly, I'd put them just ahead of Bengalis, but not much higher. I also don't think the Civ has any particularly good late game or any particularly good matchup. It just feels like a kind of Civ that's only good if you love it. Like if you want to one-trick it, or if you love how it plays. You have to play super defensive early, you have to survive a bunch of pressure, and then only if you get the relics and start popping off in Castle Age onwards can the Civ feel strong. Again, still playable, still strong if you like the Civ, but in my opinion, it has a lot of weaknesses, and if you're a beginner, again, stay away from this Civ. It's not worth your investment. Next up, we got the Burmese. This is another winner from the infantry patch. Burmese is heavily leaning towards its infantry in the early game. I personally love the civilization. I think it's a really fantastic civ. And I think it has pretty good options. And I also think it's a myth that it dies to archer civs. I think you can still get away with really good early game economy, pressuring them with meta arm skirm. One of the best strategies on the new patch, by the way. Every civ that can do meta arm skirm to a high degree, for me, is like already a good civ on this new patch. Like already, it's a solid civ. So I teach people how to do it, and then I also teach people how to stop it, and then I let people figure it out on the rank ladder, see who wins, see who comes out on top. But anyway, I think meta arm skirm is one of the best strategies in the game, and right now Burmese are doing it pretty well. So for me, Burmese are probably going to be something like bottom of B tier. A lot of other top players would not agree with this, but I don't care because I'm rank 1. So until they can prove me otherwise, I'm right and they're wrong, and that's the way we do things around here. Now, in all seriousness, though, like it's up for debate, but for me, I think the early game is strong enough to justify the high placement in the tier list. Like, I mean, it's not that high, it's mid-range, but it's enough to propel you to a good mid game. You have a good economy that should get you to late game, and Burmese late game is actually quite solid. So for me, I think it's just overall a good civ. Next up, we have the Byzantines. Now, for me, the Byzantine is the civilization to pick up if you're a defensive player. Like, this civ is almost impossible to beat if the Byzantine player plays perfectly. However, if you start making mistakes as the Byzantine, you die very fast because you don't have any economy bonus and your civ is very slow to start. It's not good at taking the initiative, but it's very good at keeping its advantage and pushing it further because you take trades against all the opponent's because you take trades against the opponent's units, you use counter units, you use camels, you use spearmen, you use skirmishers, and you just keep taking favorable trades, pushing your advantage from one, from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, until you can actually find a game-winning push. I also really like Byzantine bonus that gives you the town watch and the town patrol upgrades for free. That's one of the best and most underrated bonuses in the game. It's so crucial to get those vision upgrades like in the standard game, but getting them for free from the start of Castle Age basically means that you never get surprised by anything. Absolutely love the Byzantines, and I'm going to put them in the A tier. I'll also tell you specifically why the Byzantines deserve a spot in A tier. The cataphracts are really good at countering infantry in late game. And right now, we're not in an infantry meta, but infantry are very viable at all stages of the game. So having like cataphract as an option against certain infantry civs really saves the day in certain matchups. And I think like Byzantines has things to counter archer civs, has things to counter cav civs, and also has things to counter infantry civs. So against Byzantine, you have to really mix and match your units, and not every civ can do that to the same degree that Byzantines can, considering they get a discount on some of their units. So for me, Byzantines, super defensive civ, not for everyone, but if it's for you, it's amazing. You're going to love it. All right, next up we have the Celts. Celts is one of the civs that can do men-at-arms scrum to a decent degree, and I think they buff the Woad Raider, the Elite Woad Raider. I think that unit is like basically broken, to be honest with you. It's kind of like the Jaguar Warrior for me, where the unit itself is like basically overpowered. However, it's hard to get to, and not every matchup the Woad Raider can shine. So the Celts, where does that leave them? I would actually put them like somewhere bottom of B tier. I'm not exactly sure where, but I think I even put them ahead of Burmese, maybe. Like, I genuinely think the Civ is amazing right now. Your early men-at-arms can really control the game because they move faster than every other unit in Feudal Age. Like, that's huge. They move faster than Archer, than enemy men-at-arm, than Skirmisher. I think they even move faster than enemy or like generic Spearmen. Don't quote me on that, but it would be insane if that is true. And I just feel like the Celts get off to a good start. You have the good wood bonus that helps you play range units in the Feudal Age. And then past that, you have Woad Raiders, which are absolutely insane. They have 15 attack in Imp, and even the Cast Age stats are not even that bad. So for me, the Celts are an incredible civilization, but just not one. It's super fair, you know what I mean? It's not one that gets like unfair bonuses. It's like super fair, but if you know what you're doing, I think the Celts are absolutely insane. Next up, we have the Chinese. Now, when the Chinese lost the Camel and got the Fire Lancer, I was a bit dubious about that trade. I felt like the Chinese lost a bit of their power. After testing the Fire Lancer out, and especially after the new patch where the Fire Lancer got a double buff, I think the Chinese are absolutely insane right now. Chinese are still Chinese. They're still the really strong Arabia Civ that get really good options. Their start is as cleaner and as consistent as possible, and the best it's been for a while now. They made it a lot easier to do the start by giving the town center an extra 5 populations. You don't need to make a house anymore. Chinese is a super good civ to one-trick as well, by the way. Like, it's insane to one-trick it because, how do I put this? When you get a standard civ, and let's say you're playing random civ, all right, and then you random into Chinese, it's hard to react fast and, okay, I need to get loom and get everyone back, no houses needed. But if you're intentionally picking the Chinese, you can do the start super smooth. You know you don't need to make a house. You know you're going to get loom right away, so you can just get loom right away, pull every build to the sheep, and get a really clean start. But past the early game, past the start, I think the Chinese are insane right now. The Fire Lancer gives you such a good option to crack Skirmisher defense, and it also completely destroys Skirmisher Hussar comps in late game, which was basically one of the things dominating the last meta. Like, the last meta, Skirm Hussar was at the top of the meta for like late game. That's just how you played the game against Archer civs. But now, Chinese can go Arbalest, force the Skirms, the guy goes Skirm Hussar, Arbalest Fire Lancer, send them in, and they are insane. They're so hard to stop. And yeah, I feel like the Chinese are really, really strong because of that addition. and just because the Civ is, very, very good in general. Next up, we have the Cumans. I personally think the Cumans are a bad Civ for the current meta, but I'll never put them in the bad category just because I think that a good Cuman player can actually do really, really well. I would probably put them at the bottom of subpar. You have to be good with Cumans to make them work, in my opinion. You have to know how to 2TC boom. You have to know how to ram push in Feudal Age. You have to know how to play unorthodox Age of Empires. You have to know how to like really cheese it for your opponent. And if you can do that, the Civ will feel amazing. If you can't do that, I think it's one of the weaker Civs in the game at the moment. And I would almost call it a bad civilization. So I only go for the Civ if you like their uniqueness. And if you do like their uniqueness, then you have a lot of good bonuses. You get the cheaper buildings in Feudal. 2TC Boom can be insane and really hard to stop. The Ram Push can also be insane and really hard to stop. But again, besides those two approaches, Cumans don't really have a lot going for them. Actually, last thing on the Cumans, you do get fully upgraded infantry, both Halb and Champs. A lot of people don't know this. Like, Cumans actually have a decent tech tree in late game, so they are somewhat playable in late game if you can get there. Next up, you have the Dravidians. Remember what I said earlier? Men-at-Arms Skirm. Men-at-Arms Skirm is an absolutely amazing strategy, and the Dravidians are one of the best civs at doing that. It's not a very good civ late game, has its weaknesses late game. The Urumi Swordsman is still, unfortunately, in the garbage tier. I don't want to play with that one. However, their Champion Skirm comp in late game, fantastic. Their Elephant gameplay, Elephant Archer, Elephant Ram, like the Siege Elephant, really, really strong. Highly underrated, by the way. Siege Elephant is actually kind of insane in the right circumstances. For me, Dravidians are one of the best civs of the B tier. I might even mess around and put them ahead of the Aztecs, honestly. But I rate the Men-at-Arms Skirm strategy really high. Like, for me, that's the strategy to beat in the meta. Like, the Men-at-Arms Skirm strat beats every other strat in the game at the moment, unless your opponent is well prepared to beat it and to face it, unless he's bringing something specific to the table. But like generic Men-at-Arms Skirm civ, I think that civ and strats will just be like the best one to do it out of the opening at the moment. Because the thing is, it used to be Men-at-Arms to Archer because the meta was like scouts, right? But if your opponent is on scouts, you can just go Men-at-Arm, make 2-3 spears if you need it, so the scouts can't do anything. Then your opponent does what? He goes scouts into skirms. So if you go Men-at-Arm to Archer, the skirms will counter you. But if you go Men-at-Arm to Skirm, you mix in a couple spears, all of a sudden, your skirms can outnumber and overpower the enemy skirms that is doing scout into skirm. And so your pressure with the infantry can go on for a lot longer. You don't have to like stop making infantry and transition into a defensive position. You can continue pressuring, continue adding in infantry and skirms, and overpowering your opponent. It's super interesting, like Men-at-Arms being cheaper and more affordable, and the supply stack, that horrible supply stack, being completely dumpstered, thrown in the garbage, made infantry play in Feudal Age viable. You can actually continue to play infantry in Feudal Age, and that reason alone makes Dravidians a strong civ and a top of the B tier. Alright, next up we have the Ethiopians. I think the civilization is decent, but I am not a huge fan of pure archer civs in the meta, because again, as it stands currently, skirms are running around rampant right now. So for me, Ethiopians are more of a civ that wants to open infantry, take advantage of its strong timings, and then kind of like play archers, but keep itself pretty flexible. I will say the Shotel Warrior is pretty good as an option to counter skirms and to like really push in castlage with the Shotels. Like Shotels sneak attacking, sniping town centers, or like breaking buildings. Very, very viable strat, especially with unique tech and castlage, giving them resistance against cavalry. For me, Ethiopians are a decent civ, solid civ. I'd probably put them somewhere in the B tier, but like in the middle of B tier. On this patch, I personally just value the skirm civs higher than the archer civs, and so that's why I have something like the Dravidians higher than Ethiopians, even though if you really think about it, they are very similar civs in nature, but one of them is more focused on archer and the other is focused more on the skirm, and so therefore I lean more towards the skirm. Next up, we got the Franks. Franks will never be a bad civ, and in fact, I still believe it's a really good beginner option. You can do everything in the game with the Franks. Don't think you have to just open scouts and scouts only. I actually think the meta-arm into skirmisher strategy is quite good with the Franks, because you're able to get free horse collar behind it and the berry bonus, which really fuels it. And on top of that, you have your initial scout that's still pretty strong. You have your 54 HP initial scout. So meta-arm into skirm with the Franks is actually quite reasonable. I'm not going to say it's the best civ in the game, but it's very easy to play. It's very solid. It's very consistent. And I just feel like it's one of those civs that always has like you're always doing what you want to do with the Franks. And even if you open with something else like meta arm to skirm, the knight transition afterwards is still incredibly strong. So for me, I feel like Franks are somewhere in the top of the B tier. I'm going to put them slightly behind the Dravidians, which I know feels like it's absolutely insane. I can't believe I'm saying this, considering where Dravidians started in my tier list like a year or two ago. But yeah, like things have changed. Meta has shifted. Patches have came in, and we now see Dravidians ahead of Franks. But that's that's a good placement for Franks. Still, I absolutely love the civ, and it's one of my personal favorites, despite not being the greatest civ of all time. Next up, we have the Georgians, and I honestly think the civ lost some favor, but it's still a reasonably good civ. I think it's a civ that benefits a lot from having chickens in the game, kind of like Armenians, by the way. So keep an eye on the chicken maps with these mule cart civs. For me, Georgians are probably somewhere in the top of B tier. I'm going to put them... You could also put them bottom of A tier as well. I'll throw them in the bottom of A tier. I used to think that the civ was still S tier, but upon doing some more testing, like... The thing is, like, Georgians just don't feel as good in Feudal Age like they did before. The scout healing is actually a lot weaker in Feudal Age at the moment, barely noticeable. So it's just enough to like get good trades and annoy your opponent, but it's not enough to like really abuse your opponent, like you were able to do it like before they got nerfed. So I think Georgians are still good at what they do, which is like Castle Age onwards, CA, or like Manaspa or Knights, Light Cav with healing. I think that's good, but the Feudal Age got a lot weaker, and I think you kind of have to survive to like mid game to really see the civ shine. But if you do get there, Georgians are absolutely fantastic and definitely worth putting at a pretty reasonable spot in the tier list. My personal favorite thing to do with the Georgians, though, is actually rely on their Svan towers in the late game. I think the Svan towers are incredible. Definitely an underrated aspect of the Georgians. Something like Hussar, Halb, and then spend all your golden stone goes into like siege and Svan towers. Try it out and let me know how you like it. Next up, we've got the Goths. The Goths are like your basic infantry civ, which got a lot better. This is probably one of the biggest winners of the new patch, of the infantry patch, not the new patch, excuse me. But the infantry patch completely changed the way Goth are played. I hated, all right, and please side me in the comments if you agree with me on this. I hated when we had supplies and you're playing Goths. You have like a discount on infantry, your opponent is playing a generic civ, but your opponent has supplies and you don't as Goths. So your whole civ identity is getting a discount on infantry, and your opponent just gets a stupid tech and also gets a discount. So in Castlage, if you go for an all-in Huskrow, like Huskrow, Longsword, Pike, all-in infantry, your opponent just goes Longsword with supplies. And he's got like a way better economy civ, for example. And you just feel like, okay, well, now my whole civ is getting counted by like some random tech. I hated that. And now I like that Goths have been balanced around a Longsword or a champion line that costs the same for everyone, but now Goths have the discount still. I think that's fantastic. I think Goths get a lot better in late game because of that. I'd personally put Goths right here in the middle. I value them ahead of Ethiopians and probably ahead of these civs as well. Again, I think the meta-arm skirms strategy is insane. I think the Goths get off to a really good start because of the hunt bonus in the early game. Hunt lasting longer is huge. And I also think Goth and Chicken Arabia, super solid. If your opponent is not doing the Patreon chicken strat where you take the chickens early, if he's not doing that, which not a lot of people are doing, by the way, I don't know why. Like, I've been talking about it openly for a long time now, videos there, but a lot of people are just not doing it. I think Goths can just hard punish it. They can just go like early militia before the mill, even lumber camp into like barracks pretty early. And then you can go ahead and just punish your opponent's chickens, kill them with the militia, and continue pressuring from there. You can also, a bit of a cheese tactic, but you can send a villager in Feudal Age, villager in Dark Age, get Loom right away, which researches instantly, so you're not a vill behind. And then you can snipe your opponent's chickens on a Chicken Arabia map. So, and then maybe even try to get one of their boars, for example. Wall in your vill, kill the boar with the vill. If you're really smart, you can finish off the boar with the scout, so they can't even take the boar meat when you do kill it, like in the middle of the map or closer to town center or whatever. Last hit with the scout and the boar meat is completely gone, and that can really screw your opponent over. So Goth have a lot of laming potential, a lot of cheese potential, and overall just a good civ in early game and a good civ in late game. Love the civ right now, and it's honestly pretty fun to play. Next up is the Gajaras. I actually made a specific video on the Gajaras being bad. It's gonna come soon. The Gajaras are actually really bad right now. They are easily one of the weaker civs in the game right now. I won't go too in depth as to why, but it has to do with them not being able to play with men at arms that got a huge buff, and being horrible on Chicken Arabia maps. And because of that, I actually believe that Gajaras are in the bad tier at the moment. It's crazy. Personal experience says that the civ is really just not that strong. The win rate is absolutely horrendous. It's in like the low 40%. It might even drop to 39% win rate, which is insane. At all elos, by the way. This is not a low elo problem. This is also a high elo problem. Gajaras are not performing very well at all. It's a civ that really relies on deer, and when you get Chicken Arabia, it kind of falls apart. And getting off to a bad start is really bad because a lot of other civs, like especially the Bulgarians, the Goths, the Celts, the Burmese, these can do insane meta arm rushes and really punish you for having a slow start. And I just don't think that the civ has a lot going for it later on. So even if you're able to survive the start, not like your civ is that special afterwards. I think you only play the Gajaras if you like the Gajaras. Otherwise, just play anything else. Like, it really is that simple. It's a bad civ at the moment, and you can still win with it, but it's going to be inconsistent. Next up, we got the Hindustani. Hindustani can be seen as a better version of the Gajaras, one that is much more solid in its nature. I would put Hindustanis at the bottom of A tier probably. I think it can be weak to some early game meta arm rushes, but if you're playing the Hindustani smart and you're upping really fast because you get cheaper vills in the early game, you will be in a position where you're able to up fast and play archers. And if you play archers and you do like the good anti-meta arm tactics, then you should be in a good position to not die to meta arms in the early game and then survive and scale for a very, very solid bunch of options later on. You can play into your camel line, which is fantastic versus all cav civs. You can play into your hand cannoneer with 9 range, which according to Spirit of the Law and myself are the best hand cannoneers in the game. I've been saying that for a little bit now. This unit feels absolutely unfair to play against in the late game. So if you get there, you play Hindustani, you get to late game, 9 range hand cannoneer, Hussar in the front, or heavy camel, or Imperial camel even in the front, it's so hard to play against that. So I think Hindustani are very flexible. They have a good eco bonus, and you just have to watch out not to die to some of the early game meta arm skirm civs. You can also do that strat yourself pretty well, but you don't get any specific bonuses for it. But yeah, I think Hindustani are a solid civ and only kind of die out to some of these higher tier civs. And actually, fun fact, Hindustani have 0 counters, 0 proper counter to elite cataphracts. Think about it. The Imperial Camel is actually horrible against that unit. I was also shocked myself. Try it out in the editor and then come back and let me know what your experience showed you. I can go more in depth, but just trust me that the matchup is really horrible for the Hindustanis. Next up, we have the Huns. I have felt like the Huns have been pretty mediocre for a while now, but I think it's the kind of civ that gets like pretty good if you like it, but if you don't like it, just stay away from it. I don't know. I'll probably throw it somewhere here, probably a little ahead of the Bulgarians, but it's preference, and I honestly put the Bulgarians ahead. I'm gonna be completely honest. I'd prefer the Bulgarians over the Huns. I think the Huns have a decent early game, like a good, solid early game, but they do nothing well. They just do everything decent, you know what I mean? And I just feel like if your opponent is really trying to counter the Huns and plays a slow, like full wall early game and just relaxes, I think the Huns have very little against that. Most civs can do like Halb Skirm even, or like Halb Arbalest, and that just feels really hard to stop as the Huns. But obviously, if you are playing like like Cav CA or Knight CA and Castle Age, and then you go into like CA Hussar later on, it can still feel really good, and it also has a decent like flexible, a few options in early game. You can kind of just do whatever you want and have a smooth early game, smooth economy. And if you're a guy that gets housed a lot, then it could be a good civ for you. So it has stuff going for it, but for me, it's just not something that I'd really commit my time to try to perfect and master. So decent civ if you like it, but if you don't like it, you're not missing out on much. Next up, we have got the Incas. Incas do pretty much everything in the meta pretty well. They do infantry well, they do skirmishers well, and they also get slingers, which are probably one of the best anti-infantry units you can get in Castle Age. Because it's basically a hand cannoneer, but that is affected by ballistics, which is huge. So for me, Incas are super solid, but they're not insane. It still feels like kind of a fair civ. It can feel a bit overwhelming at certain, like in certain areas, but for me, it's like a weaker version of Byzantines. I'd probably put them ahead of the Aztecs and probably ahead of the Franks as well, but I'm not really sure if I'd prefer them to the Dravidians, because I feel like the Dravidians have slightly more powerful options. But this feels like a pretty good place to put the Incas, and I think if you like Mesocivs, Incas are a pretty good option at the moment. Next up, we got the Italians, one of the biggest winners of, not the last patch, but the infantry patch, because they got a direct buff, giving the archers +1/+1 armor from the start of the game. You don't have to research a tech and Castle Age now to get that bonus, to get that upgrade, and that is crazy. That is a really, really, really good bonus. It's not unfair. Again, I really want to emphasize that it's not an unfair bonus, but it feels super smooth and it meshes exactly well with the Italians' gameplay. The Italians' gameplay is to get small advantages here and there. You save a bit of food on your first click up, then you save a bit of wood on ballistics, you save a bit of food and gold when you click up the Castle Age. You also save on, or you have like the archer armor now that really helps out. You save on Imperial Age, you save on gunpowder units. Little savings here and there, and getting the extra armor early on helps you take better trades in early game, helping you like snowball your advantage ever so slightly. And then, of course, the Italian late game is still fantastic. Ton of good options. And the Genoese Expo completely shuts down certain cav civs. And I absolutely love that. I absolutely love that. So for me, Italians are the most playable archer civ in the current meta. Or at least one of them. Just because it's an archer civ that also has a really good tech tree on the other aspects of its game, like Hussar, fully teched out, bombard cannons there, hand cannoneers there, condottiero is there as well. Only thing that you're really missing is the halberdier, but you have the Genoese Expo that kind of makes up for that. I'd probably place them somewhere in the B tier still, despite me talking them up, just because they don't feel like they're that strong, and they don't feel unfair at all. It's like the most fair civ in the game. I'd probably throw them just behind the Incas, but I think they're a bit better than the Franks because they have a lot more options, and I think it's just some slightly better matchups as well. Next up, we have the Japanese, one of the biggest winners of the infantry patch again, and it's one of the civs that can do men-at-arms skirm incredibly well, one of the best in the game. For me, this is maybe a little crazy, especially considering Chicken Arabia. I think Japanese are bottom of A tier. This is insane because like 6 months ago, I made a video talking about how Japanese were one of the worst civs in the game and how they were so easy to play against. But a lot has changed in those 6 months. Infantry became viable. Infantry became actually a very scary threat in Feudal Age. And Japanese still have their really strong CA in Castle Age. After their really good opening in Feudal Age, they can play a strong CA play and then scale to a decent late game with the Cav Archer at its forefront. You also have Champion being an option in the late game as well. The Samurai got a pretty significant buff. The Samurai feel really good right now, especially against Skirmisher. I feel like Skirmisher used to actually kind of counter the Samurai, which is really sad to say. But now the Samurai move faster. They get that +1 damage as well on the first charge attack. And that makes them much stronger against Skirmishers and allows them to break the ranks of the Skirmishers more effectively. So are Japanese the best in the game? No. But I think they are one of the best civs at doing men-at-arms into skirm, and that is one of the best strategies in the game, if not the best strat. And so therefore, put 2 and 2 together, you have a really strong civ in the Japanese. Bottom of A tier, very fair still, but very, very strong. My opinion, if you want some free elo, pick up the Japanese as your civ, use my Patreon build for the 18 pop Japanese men-at-arms, the 17 build, one of the fastest men-at-arms rushes in the game, and you'll destroy people on the rank ladder. It's a very hard build to like do, so it's not for everyone. But if you can practice that and do it well, you will literally destroy people. Like literally, completely obliterate them before they're even able to get going. So for me, Japanese, fantastic. That strategy specifically, absolutely, just like peak Japanese gameplay. Next up, we got the Georgians. Wow. Okay, Georgians. My goodness, this Civ, I have no idea where to put it. I think the Civ has some clear weaknesses, but it has some really good strengths as well. Siege Engineers in Castle Age is ridiculously broken if you can get there. Like that 100% is overpowered. If you can get it. Like, I know it's expensive and it's balanced because it's hard to get to. But once you get it, it's completely unfair. An extra range in a Mangonel war, you never lose your Mangonels. You also do more damage to buildings. You have like also you don't have Mangonels, you have rocket cards, which I consider to be slightly better than Mangonels, or at least harder to play against. So this stuff just feels insane. Grenadiers feel insane. They got triple buffed on the last patch. Grenadiers are out of this world at the moment. I think they're really hard to deal with. Not overpowered because I don't feel like your opponent gets Grenadiers and there's nothing you can do. Knights are still okay. Siege is decent, but when like what Grenadiers are good at, which is killing mass units, especially like the weaker units like archers and skirms, they do very, very, very well at. So where does this leave the Georgians then? You also have a good late game with it, very good late game. You have a good early game, and it's a really beginner-friendly civ because your sheep, your boar, your deer, none of it rots. So you get really good, consistent games with the Georgians. I'm gonna take a gamble on the Georgians. Honestly, I'm gonna put them bottom of A tier. And I might even put them ahead of the Japanese, but that's interchangeable probably. Probably. I will take a gamble on the Georgians. I'll put them here. I could be wrong. They could be seen as a weaker civ. But from my experience, I honestly feel like the civ has so much going for it. And on top of that, they also have a really good anti-meta strat, or like a cheese strat, if you will, which is the Fast Castle Fire Lancer plus Rocket Cart Rush. I think I invented the strat. I'm going to take credit. I'm going to claim it. Just because I saw no one else doing it, and I just kind of came up with it myself. And I think it's absolutely insane. The strat got buffed a lot in the last patch. Again, not to like overburden you guys and annoy you guys, but I do have a guide on that strategy on the Patreon. I've got multiple gameplays on YouTube trying that strategy as well, and I've been destroying people with that strat on the rank ladder. It is quite literally my favorite strat in the game right now. Besides, that's like not meta play, and the Georgians are the best civ to do that strat with. And I genuinely think it's a powerful strat in the sense that like it's not that risky to do, and it can absolutely destroy your opponent. And even if it doesn't work, like even if you don't win with the Fast Castle Fire Lancer, you can fall back on a really good Georgian late game, which a lot of other cheesy strats cannot do. They're all in. So if you stop them, you win the game. And Georgian Fast Castle Fire Lancer, they actually have a backup plan, which I love. So Georgians, hard to place them because they have really good strengths and they have really good and they have really big weaknesses. But I would put them bottom of A tier. I didn't really talk about the weaknesses, by the way. A lot of you guys might be confused. The weaknesses are that they don't really get knights, or they don't get knights at all. No Haguen cavalry either. So sometimes they could be weak against crossbow play in Castle Age. And yes, you might be thinking, well, just go Grenadier. Sometimes it's not that easy to go into Grenadier if your opponent is just like pressuring you very fast with crossbow timing. And past the early game, Georgians do not have an eco bonus. So it has like a window and a gap where it feels like it's not the best civ in the game. All right. And if your opponent punishes you on that gap, then it could be pretty rough. Next up, you have the Katans. Katans got nerfed. They got nerfed. I thought they were going to go from S tier to like B tier, maybe even C tier. And that's what I said. Honestly, when I read it, I was like, oh, Katan's going to drop quite a few tiers. They got a pretty big nerf. And the nerf was significant. But it turns out they went from here, S plus tier, S plus plus, down to S tier. They are only overpowered now. They're only in the S tier. They got nerfed, guys. I know it's annoying to see this, but I think Katans are still absolutely broken at what they do. They are one of the best scout rush civs in the game, if not the best. The fact that they don't have bloodlines is a weakness for sure, but it's hardly noticeable because they get all the tempo in the world, because their pastures are just so easy to get to, and they still gather at a pretty good rate. Their foraging gives you an extra 2 attack, which like is impossible to compete against in early game in Feudal Age with like a generic civ. And on top of that, your scouts produce faster, your spears produce faster, and your skirms produce faster. So the civ basically has no weakness as far as like early game play. Its weaknesses only come in late game where they're lacking bloodlines, and you know they might not have like the craziest tech tree, but they have one of the best infantry units in the game, the Liao Dao. That unit is absolutely cracked. If you have never played with that unit, try it out in the scenario versus any other infantry in the game, and I promise you, at the worst, it goes 50-50. It's literally insane. I played a game where I had legionaries, Roman legionaries, with a centurion near them, and I was only missing the Roman unique tech to give them a charge attack. I got destroyed. The Liao Dao were completely destroying me. And on top of that, you have like a decent few options in late game, like good step lancers. You have good Hussar. You have heavy CA that are solid. Heavy CA can come in and castle age as well. You just have so many good options. But for me, what's been best with Catan, just playing a scout rush, like heavy scouts, get foraging, pressure your opponent really hard. And then in castle age, you just go light calf plus step lancer, get iron casting, so you can break into any walls really easily, including house walls, and then go forward with a rocket cart and with a siege workshop and a few rocket carts. If you do that, it's one of the hardest strategies to hold, and it's so easy to actually execute it yourself. Next up, we have the Kamur. The Kamur are not a meta arm civ, but they are one of the best anti-meta arm civs in the game because you can up really fast with them. You don't even need a lumber camp. If you want to go no lumber camp, no mill, you can do that with Kamur. You can up like 16 pop if you want to. It's ridiculous. You can up really fast and just make a range and go archers. And you don't die to meta arms. So it's one of the best anti-meta armor civs in the game. And on top of that, it just feels really easy to play with the Kamur. You can play scouts, you can play skirmishers. Your farms are kind of like Katans, where they gather quickly in the early game, giving you a nice food advantage. You have a pretty wonky late game. It can be insane if you get to like Ballista Elephant or like Heavy Scorpion. Their Heavy Scorpions are actually one of the best things in the game right now in late game. Best backline DPS that you can get. But then again, if you go into Scorpions and your opponent has good bomber cannons and halbs to protect them, Kamur can be in some pretty big, yes, they can be in some pretty big trouble. So for me, Kamur is in the hands of the average player, the like not Kamur one trick in the A tier. If you're a Kamur one trick, I think you could be an S tier civ. So it's a civ that has a high ceiling, but the floor is also not that high. It's a pretty easy civ to pick up and just play. And it's definitely one that if you're good, you get rewarded. Like you start hopping in houses and you're just like you're doing crazy builds. But even if you're like the worst Kamur player on the planet, you're still like getting up a good smooth start. You skip your barracks, defend the meta arm rushes or whatever's coming your way. You play archer scout or skirm scout, and you're just gonna be completely fine with a really smooth economy. Koreans, not the best civ. We've had a lot of civs in the A and S tier recently, like a bunch of them. But Koreans are going to kind of bring us back down to reality. They're just not the best civ in the game at the moment. They don't do that well in the early meta arm fights. However, they do get cheaper skirmisher and spearmen, which is quite nice. I think if you play towards the strength of Koreans, it's a decent civ. You could do the fast castle Fire Lancer push, and you could just play Fire Lancer in late game. You have elite rocket cards, which are reasonable. Yeah, I don't know. I think the civ is like, it's okay. It's okay. It's a decent civ. I'm thinking somewhere in the subpart here, though. To be perfectly transparent. I feel like I'd probably put them right here behind the Huns. Maybe ahead of the Huns. Because I think that the civ can do some pretty good stuff. And it's kind of one of those civs that, like, it's a trash unit spam with good towers and siege. That's like kind of like your main comp. But then you also get Fire Lancers on top of that, which is pretty solid. Again, Fire Lancer is like a huge aspect to the meta, by the way. Like that unit's actually kind of cracked. So yeah, definitely don't sleep on the Koreans. Not the worst in the game, but it's just not that good at the moment. And I think that really strong meta arm skirm civs can overpower the Koreans. Koreans can't really open meta arms too effectively. And if they open pure skirm, they could risk just getting overpowered by some of the other faster civs in the game. Next up, we have Lithuanians. I think it's really good in like the skirm meta, and it's good against meta arms because you can go skirms that move faster, and they like skirms still kind of destroy meta arm if you can move faster, like with the Lithuanians. So for me, for that reason alone, it's a decent civ. And I also think it has like pretty good chance to control the relics in mid game. And if you do control the relics, Lightus is one of the best units in the game. Like 13 damage that also ignores armor, and it can get 13 plus 2 from blacksmith, then plus 4 from relic. Put them together, 13 plus 6 raw damage in your like straight to your soul. 19 damage every hit in castlage. How ridiculous is that? So for me, Lithuanian has a very high ceiling if you can get the relics and play them well. That said, though, I think it's an easy civ to play against. Like, let me solve your life right now. If you're playing against a Lithuanian, literally all in Castle Age every game against them. Every game. I'll tell you why. You put them in checkmate. If they add a TC to take advantage of their 100 extra food, they're going to be weaker to defend your push. If they go all in, they don't get to use their TC bonus. And they also don't get to take the relics. So all you have to do is all in them from start of Castle Age and don't let them get relics, don't let them add TCs, and then they're just a generic civ that does nothing that special. So with that in mind, for me, I think Lithuanian is a mid-tier civ, probably slightly better than Celts and Burmese, just because it can dance around infantry openings pretty well. And it has a pretty good start because it starts with the extra 100 food. Has a decent late game overall, but for me, it's nothing too special that I would never rate it that high. But yeah, again, still like a reasonable civ, and if you rely on the skirms, you'll probably have a good amount of success. Next up, we got the Magyars. Magyars are... It's one of the few civs that can play scouts against men-at-arms and be fine. The free forging and the cheaper scouts is like quite nice. It's still a really good opening. And on top of that, you can also just play infantry yourself with the Magyars and still benefit from the +1 attack, which is reasonable. The Magyar's problem, though, is that you don't have an eco bonus at all. So you just get like free upgrades. You get like military bonuses. So if you're not fighting and doing damage, you're falling behind the Magyars. But if you are doing that, chances are you have a pretty smooth game. For me, Magyars, they don't really shine in today's meta because the maps are a bit more closed. And like, if you get pressured by a fast men-at-arms skirm civ, I don't really think men-at-arms, or like, I don't really think Magyars are able to keep up with that. Not really. So I would say it's just not the civ for the meta at the moment. It's still playable, so I'm not going to put it in the bad category because it still has some good things going for it, and it still has a good late game. But I'd probably put it, yeah, probably even behind the Britons at the moment. I just don't feel it's that good. I'll put them ahead of Bohemians, Burgundians, and Bengalis just because it's a bit more straightforward. It's an easier civ to play than these ones. And when I say easier, I don't mean just for like the loyal players, the beginners. I mean also like for pros. Like I know how to play these civs perfectly, but some games are just really complicated with Burgundians. It's just hard to play the civ if you get a bad map. Whereas Magars, it's pretty much always easy for me to play. Just open scouts or open infantry, and I have strong units. I understand what I'm supposed to do. It's an easier game. So for that reason, I feel like it's a decent civ, but not one of the best ones and not suited for the current meta. Next up, we have Malay. I think Malay is phenomenal. Like one of the best civs going from age to age at the moment. They also have a really good early game. They can do men-at-arms with extra armor. They can defend men-at-arms really well because they up really fast. So probably an 8-tier civ. Yeah, we're going to go right back to the top of the tier list here. Just have to figure out where I'd put them. I would probably put them right there. Slightly behind the Kamur, just because I feel like the Kamur are getting a little bit more raw power than the Malay are getting. And the Malay are a little bit harder to play. You have to take advantage of your timings. But if you do that, I think Malay can hit some really nice timings. I think you can play men-at-arms. I think you can counter men-at-arms. And one thing very underrated, the elephants. Elephants are really good right now. Malay get super cheap elephants. There was a patch where elephants were made harder to convert. Does anyone remember that? It was so sleeper. It went under the radar. But now, you go elephants, opponent defaults to like a monk defense, a monastery defense, and you can just charge at the monastery. He gets one conversion after a while if he's lucky, and sometimes you can actually kill his monk before he gets a conversion if he reacts late or you surprise him. And then the elephants have very little like counters besides monks and pikes. So if your opponent is not on monks and pikes, the elephants can be insane. One cool strategy that I love to do is like play a standard feudal age, and then on the way up, I go forward with like 2 or 3 stable elephants, and I just go all in elephants. I did it the other day, and it felt insane. And you just go elephants near your opponent's base so you can't react to them. Feels good, man. You should try it out if you're a Malay player. But yeah, 8-tier civ, for sure. Last thing to say about the Malay, the late game is also decent, but not amazing. But I think you should get most of your wins before like hyper late game. Shouldn't let it get to like post imp. Maximum is like mid imp, and then you should find a way to end the game. But if you get to post imp, you do have 200 swordsmen, which are actually much better now. So even their late imp, their post imp, got a little bit of a buff anyways. So I like the Malay. They're a big winner of the infantry patch. Next up, we got the Malians, another big winner of the infantry patch. Not the best men-at-arms skirm civ though, because their main bonus for their economy comes from mining gold, which you can't do very, very well if you're going meta-arm to skirm. It's a much better meta-arm to archer civ, but I personally believe that the meta-arms for the Malians are really good against skirms because you get the extra 1 pierce armor, and your opponent's skirms, even if he gets fletching, will only always deal 1 damage. So for me, it's a good civ in the meta. Not insane, but I'd probably put it at the bottom of A tier at the moment. Just good at everything that you want from a civ. It can do meta arms itself. It can also counter them. It's very good at fighting a lot in Feudal Age. Very good at fighting a lot in Castle Age as well. Has a decent early imp, but it's kind of lacking some options in like some cases, and lacking some options in late imp. But I will say, the Gebetto is insane. That unit's actually kind of cracked. It's really, really good at raiding vills, really good at picking off like units, good against rams, good at sniping siege, good at kiting melee units. It's just overall fantastic unit. So I like the Malians. I think bottom of A tier suits them very nicely. Next up, we got the Mayans. This is probably the worst S tier civ in the game at the moment, which sounds like it's a bad thing, but it's actually very good. Mayans are an amazing, amazing civilization. Not great against infantry in the early game, but what I found is if you just open meta arms against some of the other meta arm civs, you can just trade off the meta arms and then get into archers pretty smooth. And if your opponent goes meta arm skirm, which is a very popular strat, Mayans have a secret weapon. You can go meta arm to archer and then go archer eagle once the meta arms are traded off. And archer eagle is actually really, really strong. They'll probably try meta arm skirm and try to pressure you, but if you used your use your archers to kill their meta arms and use your eagles to kill their skirms, ends up being a skill matchup. If you're able to do that better than they can, you can actually win the fight because they have to use their meta arm against your eagle and your skirm against your archer. So you're trying to dodge what they're trying to do, and they're trying to dodge what you're trying to do. And in the end, whoever plays it better will win. However, I think Mayans have a really good economy behind it. So as long as you're not playing against one of the stronger meta arm skirm civs, I think Mayans would be really strong at just dealing with that early pressure. Alternatively, you don't have to go meta arm opening. You can just go archer opening and be completely fine. And Mayans have just one of the best economies and one of the best like just progressions of the game. That you can just do like pure archer, mix in some eagles, mangonels if you need. You have plumed archers that are amazing against infantry. So many good options and just a really strong civ overall. It would never not be a good civ unless they nerf it. Also, the double shot skirmisher is actually very, very reasonable. But Mayans have one weakness. I'll talk about it at the end of the tier list. Next up, we have the Mongols. The Mongols are probably still an OP civ. I would probably put them ahead of the Chinese. It's one of those civs that feels fair to play against, but feels really strong. In the sense of like, okay, how do I say this? Because Mongols have 2 ways to play them. You play the sportsmanship way where you don't lame, so they feel like okay, but not that good. And you have the other way where you lame your opponent like relentlessly. And I used to think that the chickens will nerf Mongols. Not the case. On chicken maps, Mongols go directly to lame. You steal maybe 2 sheep, maybe you steal a boar. If you're lucky, you get a boar and 2 sheep. And then you can just mill your chickens, and you get a really fast uptime nonetheless. You have a really consistent game plan with Mongols. No matter what, if it's deer or chicken, you have the extra line of sight with the scout. You have the super fast uptime because of the hunt bonus. So you have a really easy game plan to gain an early advantage, and Mongols can easily snowball from there. Then they go on to having one of the best late games in the game with Mangadai Hussar, Siege Onager if you want them, Siege Ram if you want them, that move faster. Heavy Scorpion can be leaned on as well. And it's just like an overall insane civilization. Also, Mangadai is one of those units that's just overpowered. Like, everybody knows Mangadai is overpowered, and no one ever calls for a nerf. I don't necessarily think the unit should get nerfed, but it's also still like a clearly overpowered unit. It's like the CA is really good, and the Mangadai is like better than CA, which is kind of like way better than CA as well, which is kind of insane. So, yeah, for me, Mongols just straight up one of the best civs in the game. But I will say, hard to play it. If you're a bad player or a bad Mongols player, you're not going to do well. It's not like unfair. It's just that if you play it correctly, then it will be overpowered and it could feel unfair. All right. Next, we have the Persians. Persians are actually top of A tier in some capacity here. I think the civ is absolutely phenomenal. I would put it probably right here. Maybe a bit lower than Georgians. Like, you can make an argument right here, honestly. But I'll put it right here ahead of the Georgians because I feel like the Persians are one of the few civs that get off to a good enough start where you can play meta arm and also counter meta arm openings. You have really good options in mid game, and you pull ahead by doing nothing because your TC works faster. So you just get extra vills for free throughout the game. And then the big one, you get the Savar. The Savar are so hard to deal with. Look at all the top civs. Chinese, Mayans, Mongols, Malay. All of these civs have a hard time dealing with Savar. It's a paladin with an extra pierce armor that's easier to get to. Like paladin in a 1v1, like Magars, Huns. Getting to paladin, very hard to do with these civs. But with Persians getting to Savar, much easier. Cheaper tech, fast to get into, better against archers because of the pierce armor and the bonus damage that it has. It's just an overall fantastic unit. And I think one thing that Persians do really well is like scale really well with economy into the Savar, and then you just go for a big Imperial Age and try to win the game like that. You also have elephants that are decent if you get there, but they're so expensive that it feels hard to justify. Next up, we have the Poles. Now, in my personal tier list, I put the Poles in the bad category. I hate playing the Civ. I think it's so frustrating. I can go on a rant, but I'm tired now, and I want to save everyone their the ears and the time. So I'll spare you the rant, but I think the Poles are one of the most frustrating civs to play in the game. But objectively speaking, I think it's an okay civ at what they do. It's actually a very good late game civ. I just personally feel like it's very hard to survive the early game against strong meta arm civs. You have to play with full work. You have to farm in exposed territories. If there's chicken Arabia, you have to put full works out in the middle of nowhere to take the chickens, which is really awkward. And so for me personally, I'd probably put the Poles bottom of subpar or top of the bad category. All right. It's up to you where do you want to put them. I'll personally throw them in the bottom of the bad category. I don't think their win rate's that bad. Probably not. Because they're still good at what they do, which is like spamming cavalry in the mid-late game. But I just feel like the top civs of the game will abuse the civ. And even some of the mid-tier civs like Ethiopians, Goths, Celts, Burmese, Incas, Dravidians will just abuse the civ in the early game, not let them farm correctly, and just never let them get to the late game where the Poles really shine. It's a shame because I love to play Poles on a more closed map and a more booming map. But if there's any kind of open aggression on Arabia, Poles will suffer a lot. And like the Gajaras, they're really bad on chicken Arabia, which happens 50% of the time. So for me, I think that's more than enough justification to put them in the bad category. But again, still playable if you like to play them, and they still have a good late game. And the Obuch is pretty crazy as a unit itself. Next up, we have the Portuguese. Oof, that might be another S tier civ, actually. We have a lot of S tier civs. I think that's an S tier civ, actually, yeah. Kind of like the Mayans, but actually a little bit better, in my opinion. Very interchangeable, though. I just personally value them higher than the Mayans because I think they have better units in late game and more options. Bomber cannon is huge. Getting access to Cavalier and Light Cav with full upgrades is huge. Getting access to Fiteria in certain cases can be really huge. Arbalest on a discount is amazing. Knights and Castlage on a discount is amazing. Hand Cannoneer as an option is amazing. Organ Gun, unit's not the best right now, but it's still playable. Still good. Just please don't do Fast Castle Organ Gun. That is not a good strategy. I tried it. I think that strategy is horrible. So like the cheesy strategies for Portuguese are not the best at the moment, but just playing like a more meta style with the Portuguese, really, really good. You use your berry bonus for the early game advantage, and then your gold discount for the mid game advantage. Playing double gold comps is really good. Crossbow Knights. Playing Cav Archer Siege, really good. You can basically just do whatever you want in Castlage that costs gold, and you'll be doing pretty well. Next up, and you have also really good late game. Siege Engineers, Monks, fully tacked. It's just really, really strong stuff. Next up, the Romans. This, if you're a low-level player, this is free low. This is literally free low. I made a whole video about this on YouTube. You can find it if you haven't watched it yet. But the meta arm skirm is the best strategy of the meta. The Romans do meta arm skirm like no one else. You get extra armor meta arm. They take no damage to anything basically. Skirm behind it to counter the archers, which is the only threat to the Roman infantry. And then yeah, you're just golden. You're just so strong with the feudal push. Leads to a really strong Castlage push to get cheaper scorpions. Only issue with the Romans, I think you have slightly awkward slash bad late game. But besides that, I honestly feel like the Romans are an insane civilization. For beginners, I put them in the S tier, somewhere in the S tier, probably even like right behind Katans, honestly, or right behind Mongols, somewhere here. For overall, I'd probably put them like right around, oof, probably right behind the Japanese, actually. Yeah, I think that's a good, maybe even behind the Georgians. Yeah, maybe behind the Georgians. Right here seems like a pretty good overall pick for the Romans. But for like beginners, like super beginners, not intermediate by the way, like super beginner, it's an S tier civ because opponents just cannot counter meta arm and then longsword with extra pierce armor. That's just like impossible to beat. And if they go knights, you just mix in pikemen. It's just like the civ's just crazy. So yeah, I love the Romans. I think they're really strong. Even at high level, they're like very playable at the moment. Saracens, I hate the civilization. I think the civ is so weak at the moment. They nerfed the Saracen market and gave them nothing in exchange. They didn't nerf it directly, they just nerfed the market overall. But they gave the civ nothing in exchange. I also think the civ hard dies to meta arm skirm openings in early game. Because it has nothing special to defend itself. It's more like a timing based civ that's trying to hit expo timing. It has a good late game and it has good units in Castle Age, but it just feels like you always fall behind before then. I would put it in bottom of C tier because I'm a nice guy, like right, like probably here. But you can make really good arguments for it to be in the bad category. But I think like I'll put them ahead of Bohemians as well. Yeah, somewhere here is nice just because the Civ itself is nice at what it does, which is like Camel and Mamluk is still like good in some matchups. And Arbalest has a really good tech tree. Arbalest, like Heavy Siege, Hussar, fully teched, has good techs. But I just feel like it really does nothing for like the first 25 minutes. The market bonus is not as good as it once was. You don't get anything in terms of meta arms or early game prowess. And you're just basically trying to survive for the first 25 minutes. And then if you hit a nice crossbow timing a bit earlier than that, good. You can actually get some advantage. If not, you're just constantly scaling into your like late game units. And it's okay. It's an okay civ, but it doesn't excite me at all. Next up, we got the Shoe. The Shoe has actually a really good cheesy strategy right now. It's running around a lot. It's the Fast Castle War Chariot Rush. I think if done correctly, the strategy can be very strong. Very hard to deal with as well. That unit is very scary. And it destroys feudal age units. And the civ itself is actually not that bad. When it first came out, I thought it was genuinely one of the worst civs ever created. But actually, upon testing it more, they have some really decent options. And it's a kind of a fun civ to play. Super fair though, like very mid-tier civ, besides the chariots being like really strong in early Castle Age. Although the counter to that chariot rush, in my opinion, is just going fast castle yourself and playing redemption monks or mangonel. So if you're dying to that strategy, fast castle versus Shoe, Drush fast castle if you have to. And then the civ is really just not that good. And that rush will hard die to fast castle. So if you're up against that rush, just fast castle and you will completely destroy it. Thank me later. But yeah, for the meantime, like overall, the civ is probably somewhere in the mid tier. Probably a little higher than the Celts, maybe a little lower. Just depends on what you value more. If you value infantry more, go Celts. If you value archers more, go Shoe. Shoe can also play scrims pretty decently. I think I'm gonna put them a bit behind Celts and Burmese though, just because I feel like meta arm skirm destroys the civ, and I value the infantry skirm civs a bit higher than the archer civs in this patch. But I will say the white feather guard for the Shoe plus Arbalest plus the catapult is a really good composition. What is it? The trebuchet. The traction trebuchet. That's the word. So traction treb, white feather guard, Arbalest. That combo is really hard to beat, but it's hard to get there, and I feel like the Shoe kind of struggle in some cases, mainly to skirmishers. But yeah, if you get going with the Shoe, I feel like it's a decent civ, and the chariot rush is definitely something to watch out for. Next, Sicilians. Genuinely think this is the worst civ in the game. Maybe only Gajaras is worse. I think it gets off to a decent opening, but I think it has no redeeming quality after that. Like it literally does nothing. What do Sicilians do the other civs can't do? They nerf the sergeants. It's now like an anti-melee unit, but Sicilians don't struggle against melee units. They struggle against range units. Like Sicilians have nothing versus range units, and you could think, oh, Cavalier with the unique tech in Imperial Age. Sure, if you get there, and even if you get there, like Arbalest Halb still probably beats that Cavalier anyways. They struggle against CA. They just have no bonuses. Like the farms lasting longer is nice, but it's only really nice in like a pure boom scenario. Otherwise, you don't really have the time to set up like heavy plow farms. So I don't know. Sicilians feel like you have to use the dungeons for them to be good, but the dungeons are kind of wonky. The best thing to do with Sicilians, in my opinion, is start the game with a defensive dungeon at some point in Dark Age, and then go up to Feudal Age and just play like a Scout Rush with good Horse Scholar farms, and then go from there. But nah, it doesn't feel that great. And you can also use the sergeants to defend against meta arm rushes, which is decent. So has like some plays, but the plays that it has are like cute. They're not actually that good, you know? So I don't know. For me, it's one of the worst civs that you can go for. It's not horrible, but it's not good, and it's it's subjectively a bad civ right now. Next up, we have the Slavs, and also Sicilians are not even that good at what they do. So I'll just leave it at that. Slavs. Slavs. One of the meta arm scrim civs that actually packs a punch, by the way. Free Arson is really nice. Free Gambison is really nice in Castle Age as well. Really good farms. The extra house per military building is also really good for the early game. I don't know, man. I think Slavs are super solid right now. Probably put them right ahead of Goths and probably even ahead of Aztecs in some cases. I think they're better. Maybe even ahead of Franks. Yeah, right here is perfect for the Slavs. I'm super happy with that. You have really good options early game. You scale really well with your economy. And then you also have good options in late game with Champion, Joshina Champion, and Hal being insane. Hussar full upgrades with really good farms, insane. Siege of all kinds, all at a discount, only missing Bombard Cannon. You also have pretty good monks that move faster. Yeah, this civ just does really well at a lot of things that are not archer based, basically. That's how I view the Slavs. I think the best two openings are just opening Scout Rush or Meta Arm, and then especially Meta Arm Scrim variation feels really good. Next up, we have the Spanish. Objectively a weak civ, but has some pretty good cheese potential. I personally value them like better than the Saracens, because what the Spanish do well, I think they do very well, and I think as far as cheese goes, it's actually better than like these three civs or anything here. Also, missionaries are insane. When I talk about cheese, I mean like getting to conks fast and like, yeah, just like missionaries in general are like part of like the cheesy plan. But the missionaries are so good. On a recent patch, they made them benefit from armor upgrades, like the cav armor. It's literally insane. You can get like 75 HP missionaries with +2/+2 armor, or like +2 pierce armor. It's so strong. It's literally insane. That unit might actually be sleeper broken. Like, trust me. I can't wait to pull it out in a tournament and show everyone on on a big stage. But for now, I've just been showing some random guys on the rank ladder and like a couple thousand viewers on the rank on the stream, and that's pretty much it. But yeah, I have to make a video with those missionaries because those things are kind of insane. But yeah, Spanish, decent at what it does. Slow sips to get started, but if you like them, I think they have a good late game and good techs. And I always thought that Supremacy was a really good tech in late game, so I like the Spanish for that reason. Next up, we got the Tatars. Tatars are decent. The meta doesn't favor them that much right now because I don't think they're that good against like the meta arm openings. They want to play more like Scouts or Archer opening and play more like passive Feudal Age. But I think they still have really good CA and a really good late game. So if that's what you're interested in, Tatars are definitely worth picking up. But probably gonna be like down here somewhere. Yeah, maybe slightly better than Berbers, but actually I think Berbers are a little easier to play in most cases. Bit clearer of a game plan with the Berbers as well. I don't know, Tatars. Yeah, I'd probably prefer them to Lithuanians though, because I do like the fact that you get camels as well. I'll put them right here. I think that's a reasonable spot for them to be honest. Yeah, it's a pretty good civ overall, but it has nothing to do with the meta, and it doesn't have any cheese rushes, so it's like playing this is super random right now. If you like it, go for it, but it just has nothing special going for it. Next up, you got the Teutons. I think the Teutons are in a decent spot, actually. Teutonic Knights got buffed a lot. Those things are actually kind of insane at what they do, which is like mob infantry units and just mob melee units in general. And they look freaking sick with the elite upgrade now. So like the aura is just off the charts if you get elite Teutonic Knights. But even besides that, I think you have a pretty good opening now. Like infantry's viable, so you don't need to. Like the weakness of Teutons before is that everyone's just going scouts. Oh, scouts for scouts, and then Teutons have no husbandry, so you die to CA every game. So it's like okay, the Civ is just unplayable. But now with like men at arms being a viable opening, I think that the Teutons are actually quite strong. So for me, it's not the crazy Civ. Don't worry, it's not gonna jump to S tier, but I'm thinking like probably in a respectable C tier spot. I think would be pretty good for the Teutons. Probably right here, ahead of the Spanish, which is very fitting because they actually counter the Spanish in some capacity. Although in a much more real sense, you're probably just dying to conks. But yeah, in some cases, you kind of counter the Spanish because of the conversion resistance, and you also get like the stronger knights and whatnot. But yeah, you kind of realistically just die to conks in most cases. But anyway, it's a pretty strong civ at doing like infantry and having a good economy behind it. Late game is decent if you play like infantry siege comps, and it can also play paladin in some cases. So it's reasonable across the board. Also, don't sleep on the crenellation castles. Those things are actually kind of insane. Next up, we have the Turks. I hate the Civ. I think the Civ is really bad in the current meta. It's a shame because I used to like it a lot. But current meta, the Civ gets wrecked, man. Not having elite skirm is like, it's literally like everyone has a gun in the room and you just have a pocket knife. I hate it. I hate it. Like not having elite skirm is a huge problem. I don't know. I think that today's meta is super fast paced for Turks. Like the meta arms are just pressuring you so fast. If you open archers, you're stuck because if your opponent goes skirms, you can't go skirms because then you don't get elite skirm. I think it's actually bordering on like a bad civ, to be honest. Yeah, I really don't like Turks right now. I'll probably put them bottom of subpar because I'm nice, and I think that like the light cav are still good, and the CA are still good, and the late game is still good. And I think they still have pretty good options in Castle Age, but lacking pikemen, and specifically lacking elite skirm is a huge problem in the current meta. And I also don't think that Turks can really play infantry that well, because they don't have any good early game economy bonus besides a little bit faster gold gather rate, which is nothing that crazy. So yeah, reasonable at what it does, but very weak at what it doesn't do, which is skirms. Next up, we have Vietnamese, one of the best beginner archer civs in the game because it's very easy to understand how to use your bonuses, and it has some really good units like the Rathan Archer, which is honestly one of the best overall archer units in the game. But I don't know. I don't think the civ is like anything crazy. Probably a solid B tier civ, and it kind of reminds me of Tatars, where it has nothing to do with the current meta because like it's not really a meta arm civ. It doesn't counter them that well, but it's also just a good civ in general. It's probably like somewhere around here. Maybe even slightly better than Italians, to be honest with you. And it might even just be better than Dravidians, and just like at what it does, it just has like more options. I feel like. Yeah, I'll probably put it like top of B tier. It's just good at everything it does, and it's just a good civ overall, but it has nothing to do with the current meta. And I think it was better in like a few patches ago, like before the infantry patch. Because then you didn't have to worry too much about men at arms being strong. Now men at arms are a bit stronger, and Vietnamese don't do men at arms that well. They can if they want to, but no bonuses, so nothing too special. And I think Vietnamese want a balanced game and not like an aggressive early game. So yeah, they're not the best for the current meta, but they're still really good at what they do, which is just like massing range units, CA, skirm, crossbow with a really good economy and a very good late game. Next we have the Vikings. Stay with me because we got 3 more civs, and these civs are very interesting. Vikings, one of the biggest winners of the meta arm patch. Like actually a super strong civ right now. I'd probably put it at the bottom of A tier somewhere. I think the perfect spot is actually right below the Romans. I think the Romans do a little bit better of a job with the men at arm rush than the Vikings, especially if you get the armor on the men at arms. But the Vikings have an amazing economy behind it with the wheelbarrow for free, handcart for free. You have really good infantry throughout the game. One quick pro tip, I think Berserks are not that good. I think champions are way better in most cases. I think the only time you go Berserk is if you have a forward castle, or if you're playing against strictly melee units. If you're playing against anything at all that's ranged, I think champions are just better and easier to get to. But yeah, Vikings are just a super solid civ. They have some weaknesses in late game, but if you honestly, with a good early game and a good mid game to follow it up, you're going to be doing very, very well with the Vikings. And then last two civs, the Wei. I honestly think that the Xianbei Rider is potentially one of the best strategies in the game at the moment. Basically, Wei plays very, very smooth. Is slow start, yes. Chill early game. But if you get to the Xianbei Raider, that the unit's really, really cracked. It's basically like a cav archer that produces really fast. It's cheaper than a cav archer in terms of gold, like way cheaper in terms of gold. And it also has that nice charge attack. The unit got buffed a lot. It went from being the most useless unit in the game to actually one of the best units in the game. And I just feel like the civ itself is quite good. It also has really good options in terms of the Tiger Cav and the Heiguan Cavalry. You get that with like the unique tech that gives them extra melee armor. And you have like the Tiger Cav that counters range units and the Heiguan Cavalry that counters melee units. And then you have the Xianbei Rider as like the backline DPS. Feels really hard to lose with the civ if he gets going. And it also has a really good economy because it gets a free villager for every eco tech that you pick up. Besides wheelbarrow handcart. And gill nuts, technically. I don't know, man. I'm struggling to know where to put it, but I think it's genuinely one of the better civs of the meta. I'm going to play it safe. I think you could make an argument for top of A. You could even make an argument for bottom of S. I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to put him like right around ahead of the Georgians, probably. Maybe even ahead of the Japanese, but Japanese can probably put some really nasty pressure on the Wei and do some nasty work there with the men at arm opening. So I feel like the Wei lose a lot of prowess because of their slower start. Notice a lot of the civs ahead of them have a faster start, with the only exception being Byzantine. But I think Byzantines still do what they do with the defensive style better than Wei for the time being. But yeah, these two civs are kind of similar in how they start slow and get stronger as the game goes on. And then the last and not least, the Wu. I actually think the Wu is the second best civ in the game right now behind the Katans. This civ is absolutely busted. The Jian Swordsman is one of the most unfair units in the entire game. And that unit has no counter. Like some civs have no counter to that unit. For example, Castage Hindustani. Only monks beat it. Every civ has longsword, yes. Every civ can make longsword and beat the Jian Swordsman. But I would argue that longsword does not counter Jian Swordsman. Because Jian Swordsmen come way too fast for longsword to keep up. And Wu can easily do men-at-arm opening to prevent your opponent from like actually playing like a reasonable early game. Then get into a bunch of range units, like scrims or whatnot. And then when both players are playing range units, because you have to, because there's men-at-arms on the field, they go Jian Swordsman, early castle. And if you go longsword, the other guy's got range units. The Wu player has range units himself. And like going longswords is so difficult on defense when the Jian Swordsman can run around them and can come out faster than the longswords can. And on top of that, the Wu get one of the best economies in the game with just like plus 65 food per production building. That should get nerfed to like plus 50, by the way. It's like very, very strong. And then they also have a really, really, really reasonable late game. Very good tech, Hussarful upgrades, helpful upgrades, Fire Archer, which is quite strong. They get a hero unit if they want to lean on that. Yeah, I think the civ is kind of cracked. And yeah, there you have it, guys. That's the tier list. All 50 civs ranked. I went very in-depth on this tier list. I hope you guys did appreciate that. If you guys did, make sure to like the video and comment so other people can see it. I'm very, very happy and satisfied with this tier list. I think I did a fantastic job with like actually thinking about every civ and not just throwing them in random spots because I was lazy. So I put a lot of effort into it. And I hope it's well received from you guys, because I genuinely think that this tier list will be the way these civs look for a while. I took a few risks, like Georgians and Wei might be up or down. Katans, Wu, maybe I'm overrating them a little. I don't think so, though. And some other civs you might disagree with. But yeah, let me know how you guys think about the tier list in the comments below. And if you guys want more content from me, check me out on the Twitch for the live stream. And check me out on Patreon. Patreon is the best place to support me, and it's the best place to improve at the game because I have all my exclusive guides and content there, including how to do like some of these strategies that I'm mentioning throughout. Pretty much all of these strategies that I'm mentioning throughout the tier list. I have a guide for them on Patreon. I've got so many guides there. that are exclusive to my biggest supporters. So check that out in the link in the description below. And yeah, with all that said, I'll see you guys in the next video. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Peace.